Hello, explorers of the inexplicable, and welcome back to Stories from Eternity. For years, he was a shadow, a titanic figure in cinema, as acclaimed for his artistic vision as he was condemned for his controversial personal battles, an Oscar winner, creator of unforgettable epics from Mad Max to Braveheart. But there was one project, a single film, that not only redefined his career, but dragged him to the brink of what can only be called a supernatural mystery. A mystery that he himself states, to this day, no one can explain. We are talking about Mel Gibson and the most polarizing and haunted production in Hollywood history, The Passion of the Christ. The silence was long, heavy, and strategic. Hollywood ostracized him. The media hunted him. But now, the director's hoarse and unmistakable voice finally resurfaces, not to apologize or justify mistakes, but to cast a cold and disturbing light on the events that occurred behind the scenes of that 2003 film, events that defy physics, probability, and all the logic we know. Prepare yourselves. What you are about to hear is not just the story of a film. It is the story of an intervention, of an invisible battlefield that manifested in our world. It is the breaking of silence on an enigma that 20 years later remains the most frightening proof that forces much greater than we dare admit are at work. To understand the magnitude of what happened, we need to go back to the project's genesis. The Passion of the Christ was not just a film, it was a mission, a personal obsession of Mel Gibson, financed out of his own pocket after all the major studios, including his former home, 20th Century Fox, refused to touch the script. They feared the controversy, the explicit violence, the religious sensitivity. Gibson, however, saw a necessity, a calling. He wanted to tell the story of the last 12 hours of Jesus of Nazareth in a raw, relentless, and biblically detailed way. He chose to film in Matera, Italy, a place with millennia-old, almost biblical landscapes. But from the first day of filming, the set of The Passion of the Christ did not behave like an ordinary film set. It was as if the location itself was imbued with an energy, an echo of the events that would be recreated there. Jim Caviezel, the relatively unknown actor chosen for the central role of Jesus, knew he was committing to something more than a part. Gibson, according to reports, warned him, "This film may destroy your career. You will never be the same." Caviezel accepted the burden with an almost spiritual resignation, but neither the director nor the actor could have prepared for what was to come. The problems began subtly, but quickly escalated into the domain of the bizarre. Technical crew members reported inexplicable failures in state-of-the-art electronic equipment. Cameras stopped recording. Microphones picked up sounds of unintelligible voices only to fall silent when the recording was checked. The weather in turn seemed to have gone mad. The team was in Italy, filming in the dead of winter. But the scene of Calvary, the crucifixion scene, was filmed on top of an exposed hill. The weather became brutally cold, with cutting winds that bordered on hypothermia. Caviezel, naked on the cross, covered only by a loincloth, developed a lung infection and pneumonia. His skin was bruised, his lips blue. In later interviews, Gibson would describe Caviezel's suffering not as acting, but as a sacrifice. But the actor's torture went beyond extreme cold and illness. During the infamous scourging scene, which shocked the world with its violence, Caviezel was accidentally struck twice with a piece of wood. It was not a prop whip. It was real, excruciating pain, an error that the actor nevertheless faced with a strange conviction. In one of the interviews now surfacing, Gibson recalls the actor's reaction. He didn't complain. He just took a deep breath. It was as if he knew he needed to go through it. But the peak of unintelligibility, the irrefutable proof that something outside our world was involved, came with the manifestation of lightning. The day was cloudy, but not stormy. The crew was filming a crucial scene. Suddenly, without any warning, the sky opened up with a deafening thunderclap. An intense white flash hit the set. The lightning did not strike the ground. It struck Jim Caviezel directly, the man hanging on the cross. The assistant director, Jan Michelini, who was just a few feet from Caviezel, saw the flash and felt the impact. He described the sound as a metallic clang, followed by absolute silence. Caviezel, in turn, reported feeling something hot and incandescent passing through both sides of his head. Crew members swore they saw Caviezel's body glow, and some said they saw smoke rising from his hair. The most shocking part? Caviezel and Michelini survived. Mel Gibson, a man known for being reserved about his public beliefs, momentarily broke the silence on set in a statement that now echoes with new gravity. He said, "It was as if God was watching us, and occasionally he intervened. It wasn't punishment, it was a warning." But the intervention did not stop there. Minutes later, a second lightning bolt struck the set, and once again, it hit John Michelini, the assistant director. The probability of a human being struck by lightning is approximately 1 in 1 million. The probability of two people being struck by two lightning bolts within minutes in the same location is statistically almost zero. And the most astonishing, Michelini was struck 3 times in total during filming. Mel Gibson, in his recent and deepest reflection, returns to this point. He does not speak of timing errors or meteorological coincidences. He speaks of a presence. In that moment, we knew. It wasn't just a movie we were making. We were invading a territory that did not belong to us. We were reenacting the most fundamental act in human history, and the cosmos, the invisible, was responding. The lightning on Jan, had no rational explanation. Science fails to calculate this probability. Logic disintegrates. And that is why, to this day, Mel Gibson, the man who saw, the man who directed, affirms with a choked voice, no one can explain it. What was that? A blessing? A warning? A manifestation of power to seal the authenticity of that sacred moment. If the lightning was the signature of heaven, what about the apparitions that the production team, including Gibson, reported seeing? During filming, several crew members, at different times and locations, described the presence of a figure who was not part of the cast. A woman dressed in black who moved across the set with a strange placidity, appearing and disappearing without explanation. She was not an extra. She was not a visitor. She did not have a name on the call sheet. The figure was frequently sighted near the crucifixion site. When the crew tried to approach her, she vanished. The accounts, despite not having been publicly confirmed by Gibson with the same vehemence as the lightning incident, circulated persistently. In a project permeated by deep spirituality, the presence of this lady in black adds a layer of dark, mystical folklore. Was she an angel? A ghost? A personification of the suffering of Mary, mother of Jesus? The Stories from Eternity team suggest that on a set where the line between reality and the supernatural became so thin, the apparition of this mysterious figure is yet another piece of the puzzle that Mel Gibson refuses to ignore. Mel Gibson's faith is key to understanding why he views these inexplicable events as more than just set anecdotes. For him, they are evidence of a spiritual war that manifested physically. And this is where we enter the most controversial aspect of Gibson's recent breaking of silence, the part that directly touches on the shadows of Hollywood. Mel Gibson, Jim Caviezel, and other collaborators have been vocal over the years about what they perceive as a presence of evil forces within the film industry itself. Gibson, in particular, was one of the first to be publicly canceled by Hollywood, an exclusion that he, in recent interviews, suggests was more than just a response to his controversial statements or his personal problems with alcohol. He believes that The Passion of the Christ and more recently the film Sound of Freedom, which Caviezel also stars in, represent a direct threat to a Hollywood elite that he describes as morally vacant and in some cases directly linked to dark practices. Gibson is not just talking about politics or finance, he is talking about a spiritual battle. When Mel Gibson finally breaks his silence, he does so not just to narrate the lightning stories on the set. He uses these inexplicable events, the physical proof of a higher intervention, as a pillar for his greater thesis: that darkness is real, that evil is personal, and that the battle is fought, above all, in the sphere of culture and art. Why the boycott? Why the ostracism? Gibson insinuates that the Hollywood elite doesn't just fear a violent film, they fear the power that the film unleashed. The power to touch the faith of millions, the power to show Christ's suffering in a way that dogma and politics could not achieve. And above all, they fear the response that the universe gave to that film set. The flash, the fire, the undeniable. The sign that that production was not just entertainment, but a portal. The deepest statement by Mel Gibson, the one that ties together his entire experience, is not about suffering, but about the central mystery he now seeks to explore in the sequel to The Passion of the Christ, titled The Resurrection. He asked in an interview, who rises 3 days after being publicly murdered? Who rises on his own? For Gibson, the resurrection is the last and greatest mystery that no one can explain rationally. It is the turning point of history and the climax of his own journey of faith. And he promises that the sequel will be even more audacious, exploring not just Christ's ascent, but the 3 days between death and life, the descent into the world of the dead, the preaching to the imprisoned. Gibson indicated that the film may be divided into 2 or even 3 parts, such as the complexity of the event. He is consulting theologians and scholars to try to map what the Bible only suggests. It is a quest to understand the unintelligible, to give form to the supernatural. If what happened on the set of The Passion of the Christ, the lightning, the glow, Caviezel's survival is enough to break the silence and challenge science, imagine what Mel Gibson's team is about to face when trying to recreate the resurrection. That set was a microcosm of the combat between good and evil. Caviezel's suffering was a shadow of the original. The lightning incidents were the response of the invisible, and Gibson's conclusion, his final word on the experience, is that there is a fundamental truth about life, about faith, about the cosmos, that our reason is incapable of absorbing. The story of Mel Gibson and the mystery of the Passion of the Christ serve as a powerful reminder to all of us here at Stories from Eternity. We live in a world that desperately tries to explain everything through science, psychology, or coincidence. But there are moments, there are events where the veil is lifted and we are confronted with irrefutable proof that there is something more. Actor Jim Caviezel, after being struck by lightning, said he felt a deep peace. He converted even more profoundly to the faith. The assistant director, John Michelini, also underwent a transformation. Mel Gibson himself, the director, saw his life take an irreversible spiritual turn despite all the setbacks. The inexplicable for them was not an event of bad luck, it was a proof. When Mel Gibson finally breaks the silence to say that, to this day, no one can explain it, he is not admitting a failure. He is making a declaration of faith and knowledge. He is saying that the greatest mystery is not in what we manage to understand, but in what defies our comprehension, in what resides beyond the reach of our cameras and our scripts. And it is in this territory between what is seen and what is felt that the true history of cinema and faith is written. It is in this silence that the inexplicable echoes, challenging the reason of Hollywood and the world and inviting us to look up and ask, what else is watching? Let's revisit the lightning incident from the perspective of the statistical analysis of the inexplicable. Lightning, pure electricity from the atmosphere, seeks the highest and most conductive point to release its energy. On the set of The Passion of the Christ, Jim Caviezel was on the cross. Although he was the highest point, the probability of him being struck precisely at the moment he was reenacting the central figure of Christianity is the first question mark. Did the electricity damage the cross? Did it destroy the scenery? No. The energy seemed to have focused on Jim Caviezel, the individual, leaving him incredibly alive and transformed. The chance of being struck by lightning, as mentioned, is about 1 in 1 million. For the assistant director, John Michelini, to be struck, that probability would already be recalculated. For him to be struck 3 times. Statistics don't just fail, they surrender. If we tried to calculate the combined chance of the lead actor and the assistant director being struck by multiple lightning bolts within a few hours in the same location while filming a scene of maximum spiritual significance, the number would be so vast that it would become irrelevant. We would be talking about something on the order of 1 in 10 to the 18th or more. That's why Gibson says no one can explain it. Because the explanation is not improbability, it is an intervention. Gibson, in his broken silence, did not just report the facts. He offered his theological interpretation of what happened. He suggested that the film set was a focal point of intense spiritual energy. By reenacting the Via Crucis and the crucifixion, they were, in a way, reopening a cosmic wound. Caviezel's suffering was real, physical, and in Gibson's view, possibly demanded by a higher power to give authenticity to the project. The film's violence, so criticized, was for Gibson the only way to portray the sacrifice. And the lightning? The intervention. A tangible reminder that the protagonist of that story truly existed and that heaven, or some other dimension, was watching. The mystery did not end with the completion of filming. The psychological and spiritual burden that the experience imposed on those principally involved is, in itself, an enduring enigma. Jim Caviezel, whose career suffered exactly as Gibson predicted, began to live a life intensely dedicated to faith. He not only converted deeply, but began to see his life as a testimony. He frequently discusses the difficulties of being a Hollywood actor with such openly traditional beliefs. For him, the lightning was not an accident, but a baptism by fire. The experience marked him not just physically. He suffered from chronic pain from his dislocated shoulder and the effects of the lightning, but permanently in his identity. He is Jesus of Nazareth to millions, a weight he carries with almost monastic seriousness. Mel Gibson, in turn, was banned. His ostracism by Hollywood, although multifaceted, chronologically coincided with the stratospheric success and religious fervor that The Passion of the Christ ignited. The industry, often cynical and secular, did not know how to handle the phenomenon. And Gibson's refusal to deny or minimize the supernatural events on set only solidified his image as a dangerous outsider, someone who mixed art, faith, and the inexplicable in a way that broke Tinseltown's unwritten rules. The silence he broke now is, in reality, a war cry. Not a plea for forgiveness, but a reaffirmation that the mystery of that set is the definitive proof he needed to continue on his journey, challenging Hollywood's dominant narrative. If we look at Gibson's other works, we realize that the fascination with the inexplicable and spiritual combat is a recurring theme. In Braveheart, he explores the strength of the human spirit against oppression. In Apocalypto, he delves into the mysteries and horrors of ancient civilizations and their connections to what he perceives as dark forces. In Hacksaw Ridge, he celebrates the unwavering faith of a man amidst the hell of war. But it is in The Resurrection that the mystery becomes the script itself. How to embody an event that is, by definition, a miracle. Gibson's breaking of silence on the difficulty of scripting the sequel reveals his deep belief in the literalness of the event, but also his artistic frustration in translating the incommunicable to cinema. We must reflect, why is humanity so crucial in this process? Why do the great realms of good and evil fight over the minds, hearts, and souls of humanity? Why us? We are just a group of imperfect beings. We must ask, why are we important? Why are we in the middle of all this grand history? Mel Gibson, reflecting on the sequel. This quote encapsulates the true question that the mystery of the Passion of the Christ set raised for him. It was not just the electricity, but the existential question that the lightning represented. If the set was the stage for such a dramatic paranormal event, what is our real importance in the great cosmic theater? The inexplicable, for Mel Gibson, is the proof of relevance. He does not fear the mystery, he embraces it as the only undeniable truth. The resurrection, the lightning, the lady in black, everything points to a universe that is infinitely more complex, more dangerous, and more sacred than the movie screen can capture. And he is determined to try, even if it means facing more lightning, more ostracism, and more years of silence before the next great revelation. Silence. For 20 years, the most controversial man in Hollywood guarded a secret that defies science, faith, and all the logic we know. You watched the movie. You saw the crucifixion. But what happened behind the scenes of The Passion of the Christ went far beyond acting. I am Dan Alves, and you are watching Stories from Eternity. Today, Mel Gibson finally breaks his silence, and his revelation is explosive. He witnessed events that even today, he says, no one can explain. We are not talking about coincidences. We are talking about lightning that struck the actor on the cross not once, but multiple times. We are talking about dark apparitions and a spiritual war that turned the film set into a cosmic battlefield. Prepare for the descent into the inexplicable. The truth Hollywood tried to bury starts now. Stay until the end. Because the most shocking part, what the lightning really meant for Jim Caviezel, is about to be revealed. Mel Gibson's revelation, the inexplicable mystery that Hollywood tried to bury.